Atlanta awoke under a cloudy sky that autumn morning. The city, which never seemed to stop, was already in full swing. On the streets, cars hurried along, people rushed to get somewhere, and among them was Jasmine Carter. At 55, Jasmine was a prominent figure in Atlanta, but today, for her, it was just another regular workday. Jasmine was seated at the head of the long conference table in her transport company, Carter Logistics Incorporated. Her sharp, determined gaze followed the reports that her assistant, Marcus, projected onto the screen. "The numbers from last quarter are impressive, Jasmine," Marcus said as he pointed to the graphs showing steady growth. "We've managed to expand our fleet by another 20%, and we're now operating in every state across the country." Jasmine nodded, her eyes never leaving the screen. She was known for being a meticulous and relentless leader, traits that had helped her transform a small transportation company into a national empire. "Good work, Marcus," she replied with a slight smile of satisfaction. "But we still have a lot to do. We need to improve our operations on the West Coast. I've noticed some delays in shipments to California. I want you to coordinate with the team out there to get this resolved." "Will do, Jasmine. I'll take care of it right away," Marcus replied, jotting down her instructions. As the meeting continued, Jasmine received a message on her phone. It was from Amanda, her personal assistant, who was in her office upstairs. "Urgent meeting scheduled for 3 p.m. in New York with the investors. Impossible to reschedule. We need you there." Jasmine frowned as she read the message. "New York? Today? That wasn't part of the plan." "I need to wrap up this meeting," Jasmine said, quickly rising from her seat. "Marcus, take charge of operations for now. I have an urgent commitment in New York. We'll touch base tomorrow." "Of course, Jasmine." "Good luck with the meeting," Marcus responded, watching her as she left the room with quick steps. Jasmine headed straight to her office, where Amanda was waiting with a concerned expression. "You're on a tight schedule, Jasmine. Your flight leaves in less than 2 hours." "I've already arranged for a car to take you to the airport," Amanda said, handing her a travel itinerary. "Thanks, Amanda. I'll grab my things and head out now. Please inform the New York team that I'll be there on time," Jasmine replied, already thinking about the next phase of her hectic day. Jasmine grabbed her bag and hurried out of the office, heading down to the garage where the car was already waiting. She didn't like unexpected changes, but she knew that in the business world, you had to be ready for anything. On the way to the airport, everything seemed to be going smoothly until the driver, trying to avoid a car that suddenly swerved into his lane, slammed on the brakes. The sudden movement caused the cup of hot coffee Jasmine was holding to spill all over her clothes. "Damn it!" Jasmine exclaimed, trying to wipe the stains spreading across her silk blouse. The driver, visibly shaken, apologized repeatedly. "I'm so sorry, Miss Carter. It was an accident. I didn't see the car cutting in front of us." Jasmine took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "It's okay, it wasn't your fault. We just need to find a clothing store as quickly as possible. I can't arrive at the airport like this." Still nervous, the driver sped up, taking her to a small clothing store they found along the way. The place was simple, nothing like the luxury boutiques Jasmine usually frequented, but she was in a hurry and didn't have time to be picky. Inside the store, Jasmine quickly picked out a simple outfit, a pair of jeans and a white blouse. Nothing flashy, but enough to make her presentable. Back in the car, Jasmine glanced at the clock. She still had time, but she would need to hurry. She settled into the seat, trying to ignore the discomfort of being dressed so plainly. To her, the important thing was getting to the meeting on time. But little did she know, that small incident would be the starting point for an experience she would never forget. As the car moved through Atlanta's busy streets, Jasmine stared out the window, lost in her thoughts. The new, simple clothes, which she hadn't yet gotten used to, brought back memories of a distant past. Before she was the powerful CEO of Carter Logistics, Jasmine Carter was just a girl from a small town in Alabama, fighting to escape poverty and build something bigger than she could have ever imagined. Jasmine was born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, a city with a rich history but also marked by the scars of racism and inequality. The daughter of a domestic worker and a mechanic, she learned the value of hard work early on. Her mother, Evelyn, was a strong and determined woman who always told her daughter, "Never let anyone tell you that you're not capable, Jasmine. The world out there isn't easy for people like us, but you've got to be stronger than it. Study, work hard, and carve your own path." Jasmine took those words to heart. In school, she was a dedicated student, always striving to learn more and exceed expectations. But being a young Black girl in a southern town in the 70s wasn't easy. Jasmine faced prejudice daily, both for her race and her social status. Yet instead of bringing her down, it only made her more determined. "One day, I'm going to get out of here, Mom," Jasmine would say, sitting on the porch of their small house in Montgomery. "I'm going to have my own company, be the master of my own destiny. No one will tell me what I can or can't do." Evelyn would smile, proud of her daughter, but also worried about the challenges she would face in pursuing her dreams. "I believe in you, Jasmine. But remember, the road to success is full of obstacles. Don't forget where you came from, and above all, stay true to yourself." Jasmine carried those words with her always. After finishing high school as the valedictorian, she earned a scholarship to Atlanta University. Leaving her family and hometown behind, she set out to chase her ambitions. Life at university was a daily struggle. Besides studying, Jasmine worked various part-time jobs to support herself. She cleaned offices at night, worked in cafes on weekends, and did whatever it took to stay focused. Over time, her determination and natural abilities made her stand out among her peers. Jasmine graduated with honors in business administration and quickly landed her first job at a small transportation company. "I remember when I first started," Jasmine thought, looking out the window. "They put me in charge of managing local deliveries, thinking I would fail. But in less than a year, I tripled the branch's profits." Her talent for business was undeniable, and it didn't take long for her to be promoted. But Jasmine knew that to achieve her true dreams, she needed more than just a promising career. She needed to own her own company. At 30, using all her savings and a small bank loan, Jasmine founded Carter Logistics. In the beginning, it was a modest company with just 2 trucks and half a dozen employees. But she was relentless in her pursuit of success. While her competitors rested, Jasmine was on the road, closing deals, hiring drivers, and expanding operations. The company grew quickly, and within a decade, Jasmine had one of the largest transportation companies in the country. But the road to the top wasn't easy. Jasmine faced discrimination, skepticism, and envy. Many doubted her ability simply because she was a Black woman in a male-dominated industry. "The color of my skin and my gender do not define my capability," Jasmine would tell herself whenever she encountered a new barrier. "My work speaks for me." Those words were true, and her company thrived. Today, at 55, Jasmine was one of the most successful businesswomen in the country. Yet, despite all her achievements, prejudice still followed her. The car stopped in front of the airport, interrupting her thoughts. Jasmine looked at the driver and thanked him with a smile. "Thank you for the rush, Mike. You did a good job, despite the little coffee mishap," she said, trying to ease the man's tension. "Miss Carter, I'm really sorry about what happened." "I hope your meeting is a success," Mike said, clearly relieved to see that Jasmine wasn't upset. "Don't worry about it. Life is full of unexpected events. What matters is how we handle them. And as for the meeting, it will be a success." "I'll make sure of that," Jasmine replied with a confidence that only someone like her could have. With that, Jasmine exited the car and entered the airport. She was about to face a new challenge, but the story that brought her this far would continue to guide her. What she didn't know was that despite all the obstacles she'd overcome, that day still held an important lesson about appearances and the prejudices that persisted, even for a woman of her stature. Jasmine walked through the automatic doors of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, feeling the familiar energy of the place. Crowds moved hurriedly in every direction, while announcements echoed through the corridors. She kept her focus on her goal, getting to New York in time for the crucial meeting with investors. The coffee incident and the simple clothes she wore still bothered her, but Jasmine was determined not to let anything distract her. She knew that in the business world, image matters, but what truly counts is her presence, her knowledge, and her ability to close deals. In the first-class check-in line, Jasmine noticed a few curious glances. Her simple attire, far from what one would typically expect from a first-class passenger, was clearly drawing attention. Normally, she would be impeccably dressed, but today, practicality had prevailed. When it was her turn at the counter, the attendant looked her up and down, her expression showing clear doubt. "Good morning, ma'am," the attendant said, with a slightly hesitant tone. "May I see your ticket and ID, please?" Jasmine handed over the documents, maintaining her calm and confident demeanor. The attendant quickly examined them and, upon realizing she was indeed dealing with a first-class passenger, forced a professional smile. "Oh, of course, Ms. Carter. I apologize for the delay. Here's your boarding pass. Your gate is B15 and boarding will begin in 30 minutes. Have a pleasant trip." "Thank you," Jasmine replied, taking her boarding pass and heading toward security. As she walked through the terminal, Jasmine overheard a group of passengers talking among themselves. "I don't understand why some people don't dress better, especially when they're flying first class," said a woman, casting a disdainful glance in Jasmine's direction. "Maybe she's just lost," one of the men in the group replied, chuckling softly. Jasmine ignored the comments, something she had learned to do over the years. She was used to being underestimated and knew that soon enough, those same people judging her would be looking at her very differently. But no matter how much she tried not to be bothered, a twinge of frustration filled her chest. How many times would she still have to prove her worth? Reaching the boarding gate, Jasmine pulled out her phone to check emails while she waited for boarding to begin. Among the messages was one from her CFO in New York, confirming that all the major investors would be present at the meeting. This was a golden opportunity to expand the business even further, possibly internationally. Jasmine felt the excitement building, mixed with the familiar anxiety of knowing she was about to face an important challenge. Finally, the boarding announcement was made, and Jasmine stood up, heading for the priority line. As she handed her ticket to the gate attendant, she once again sensed the look of surprise. It was as if her simple, unassuming clothes spoke for her before she even had a chance to introduce herself. "First class, ma'am?" the attendant asked, once again casting a questioning glance. "Yes, first class," Jasmine replied, her voice steady, but with a determined gleam in her eyes. The attendant scanned the ticket, returned it with a forced smile, and Jasmine passed through the gate, walking toward the plane. She knew that once seated in the comfortable leather chair in first class, the initial judgment would be left behind. Or at least, that's what she hoped. As she boarded the plane, Jasmine was greeted by a flight attendant, a woman with a polite smile that quickly faded upon seeing who stood before her. "Ma'am, may I see your ticket?" the flight attendant asked, looking at Jasmine as if she were in the wrong place. "Certainly," Jasmine said, handing over the ticket once more. The flight attendant quickly examined it and, realizing everything was in order, directed Jasmine to her seat. "Right this way, Ms. Carter." "Your seat is 2A, the flight attendant said, though her tone was colder, almost as if she was reluctant to accept that this simply dressed woman belonged in first class. Jasmine settled into her seat, trying to ignore the discomfort caused by the stares and comments that seemed to follow her every move. She placed her belongings in the overhead compartment and sat down, taking a deep breath. It was just a flight. A few hours, and she'd be in New York, where what truly mattered was her knowledge and her ability to close a major deal. Little did she know, the situation on the plane was about to take an unexpected turn. The first class, where Jasmine should have found comfort and peace, was about to become the stage for one of the most challenging moments of her life, where prejudice and ignorance would manifest in a way she could never have imagined. Jasmine adjusted in her seat, trying to focus on the meeting she would have in New York. But the persistent discomfort caused by the curious glances and the cold treatment she had received was hard to ignore. As she watched other passengers enter the first-class cabin, she noticed the furtive glances and whispers that seemed inevitably directed at her. It was as if her very presence there, dressed so modestly, was an affront to the luxurious environment. A young woman, dressed sharply in an elegant suit, stopped beside Jasmine and looked at the seat number. "Excuse me, is this seat 2A?" she asked, the suspicion clear in her voice. Jasmine looked up and calmly replied, "Yes, it's my seat." The woman hesitated for a moment, as if deciding whether or not to continue the conversation. Finally, she chose to sit in seat 2B, next to Jasmine. However, she continued to cast discreet glances, as if trying to understand why a woman dressed so simply was there. "I'm Heather," the woman said, trying to start a friendly conversation, though her tone seemed somewhat condescending. "Are you heading to New York on business?" Jasmine nodded, keeping her answer brief. "Yes, on business." Heather seemed curious, but also a bit uncomfortable, perhaps expecting a more elaborate response, or an explanation that justified Jasmine's presence in first class. "I am too. I work for a law firm in Manhattan," Heather continued, as if expecting this information to spark a longer conversation. "That's great. Manhattan is a vibrant place to work," Jasmine replied politely, but without showing interest in continuing the conversation. Before Heather could respond, the flight attendant who had attended to Jasmine earlier appeared again, this time with an even more serious expression. "Ma'am, I need to check your ticket once more," the flight attendant said, with a note of impatience in her voice. Jasmine felt her blood boil, but she kept her calm. Without a word, she handed the ticket to the attendant, who examined it more carefully than necessary. After confirming everything was in order, the attendant returned the ticket without even looking Jasmine in the eye. "Everything's fine, Ms. Carter." "Thank you," the attendant said before turning to attend to other passengers, but Jasmine noticed the look on Heather's face, now full of suspicion and discomfort. That treatment was a clear affront, but Jasmine held herself together. She knew there were still people who judged by appearances, and that was far from new to her. But even so, it was frustrating, especially in an environment where the service was supposed to be impeccable for everyone, regardless of how they were dressed. A few minutes later, all the first-class passengers were seated, and the plane was about to take off. As the aircraft began to move down the runway, Jasmine closed her eyes and tried to focus on what really mattered: the meeting awaiting her in New York. She had worked too hard to be distracted by these minor incidents, but she couldn't help the thoughts of injustice and prejudice that filled her mind. It was as if, no matter how much she achieved, there would always be someone ready to judge her by the color of her skin or the simplicity of her clothes. After takeoff, the in-flight service began. The same flight attendant who had asked for Jasmine's ticket twice approached her again, this time to offer the meal. "Ma'am, we have 2 options for lunch today: grilled chicken with vegetables or salmon with risotto. What would you like?" the attendant asked, with a smile that seemed forced. "I'll have the salmon, please," Jasmine replied politely. "Very well," the attendant said, jotting down the order. However, before walking away, she couldn't resist making a comment. "I hope the meal meets your expectations, ma'am." The attendant's tone was slightly sarcastic, and Jasmine realized that, once again, she was being tested. Her patience was wearing thin, but she knew she had to keep her composure. She responded with a polite smile. "I'm sure it will." Heather, sitting next to her, observed the entire interaction with a surprised expression. It seemed she was beginning to understand what was happening, but she wasn't quite sure how to react. The silence between the 2 women became awkward, but Jasmine preferred it that way. She wasn't willing to waste energy trying to change the opinions of people who judged her based on her appearance. When the meal arrived, Jasmine ate in silence, trying to ignore the weight of the stares she felt on her. Every bite was a reminder that, despite all the success she had achieved, there were still those who underestimated her. She remembered her mother's words, "The world out there isn't easy for people like us." Jasmine took a deep breath. She knew she had a long journey ahead, not just to New York, but in her ongoing battle against prejudice. Today, her simple clothes had made her an easy target, but tomorrow it would be something else. And she was determined not to let any of it hold her back. For Jasmine Carter, true power wasn't in what others saw, but in what she knew she was capable of achieving. The flight continued, and despite everything, Jasmine remained focused. There was an important meeting ahead, and she knew that in the end, what mattered wasn't the clothes she wore, but what she was prepared to offer, her intelligence, her experience, and her ability to turn challenges into opportunities. Little did she know, by the end of that flight, everyone on board would know exactly who Jasmine Carter was and what she was capable of. The flight continued smoothly as Jasmine watched the clouds outside her window. The discomfort caused by the earlier interactions still lingered in her mind, but she did her best to stay calm. She knew she needed to be at her best for the meeting in New York and couldn't afford to be affected by those who didn't recognize her worth. After the meal, the flight attendant returned to collect the plates, but this time, her tone was more neutral, perhaps realizing that Jasmine wasn't someone who could be easily rattled. "How was the salmon, ma'am?" the attendant asked, almost as if she was seeking a way to redeem herself for the previous interactions. "It was good, thank you," Jasmine replied, without giving it much thought. Heather, who had remained silent during the meal, now seemed to be struggling with something on her mind. She looked at Jasmine, hesitated for a moment, and finally decided to speak. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't help but notice how some people here treated you," Heather said, in a tone that mixed embarrassment with curiosity. "I don't mean to be intrusive, but you seem like a very calm person, even in the face of, well, these situations." Jasmine turned to Heather, considering whether to engage in this conversation. She knew that often people asked questions not out of malice, but out of ignorance or genuine curiosity. She decided to be honest. "Actually, Heather, these situations aren't new to me," Jasmine began, looking at the young woman beside her. "As a Black woman, especially one in a position of power, I've encountered many situations where I've been underestimated, judged by my appearance, or treated with condescension. In the beginning, it used to make me very angry, but over time, I learned not to let it affect me. I know who I am and what I'm capable of. That's what really matters." Heather seemed surprised by Jasmine's direct response, but also admired the strength that came through in her words. I really don't know what to say," Heather admitted, a little embarrassed. "I guess I've never really thought about it, you know? I mean, of course, I know prejudice exists, but I never imagined what it would be like to face it every day." Jasmine smiled slightly, recognizing the sincerity in Heather's words. "Unfortunately, it's a reality for many people. And that's why I make sure to never bow my head, never let these moments define who I am. The success I've achieved came through hard work and determination. And I won't let anyone tell me otherwise, whether it's because of my clothes or the color of my skin." Heather was silent for a few seconds, reflecting on what Jasmine had said. The young lawyer, so accustomed to the privilege of never being questioned about her appearance, seemed to be confronting a new understanding of the reality around her. "I really admire you, Jasmine," Heather finally said. "I don't know if I would have that kind of strength." "You would," Jasmine replied confidently. "Strength comes when you need it. Life has taught me that. And now, with time, I try to use these experiences to inspire others not to give up on their dreams, no matter what barriers they face." At that moment, their conversation was interrupted by an announcement from the pilot, informing them that they would soon begin their descent into LaGuardia Airport in New York. Jasmine looked out the window once more, feeling the familiar excitement of seeing the city that never sleeps coming into view. As the passengers around them began to prepare for landing, the flight attendant returned to make the final adjustments in the cabin. But this time, her behavior toward Jasmine seemed different. Perhaps something about Jasmine's demeanor, or even the brief conversation with Heather, had made the attendant reconsider her attitude. "Miss Carter, would you like some water or anything else before we land?" the attendant asked, now with a more genuine tone. "No, thank you. I'm fine," Jasmine replied, without any resentment, just eager for the flight to end. The approach for landing began, and Jasmine tightened her seatbelt. Heather, still beside her, seemed restless, as if she had something more to say. Jasmine, I just wanted to thank you for sharing that with me. I really didn't know what it was like, Heather said with a sincere look. I think I have a lot to learn about the world, about how to treat people with more empathy. Jasmine smiled, appreciating Heather's honesty. Learning is the first step, Heather. And we're all learning every day. The important thing is being willing to see the world through others' eyes and, from that, do better. The plane touched down smoothly, and Jasmine felt relieved knowing she was closer to her final destination. As the plane taxied to the gate, Jasmine's thoughts returned to the meeting she would soon have. It was time to focus on her true mission in New York. When the plane finally stopped and the passengers began to stand, Jasmine noticed that many of those who had judged her with doubtful looks at the start of the flight now looked at her differently, perhaps reflecting on their own actions. Heather, before leaving, turned to Jasmine one last time. Good luck with your meeting, Jasmine. I'm sure you're going to crush it. Thank you, Heather. And remember, it's not about what we wear, but about what we carry inside us, Jasmine replied with a warm smile. As Jasmine exited the aircraft, she knew this trip had been more than just a physical journey. It was another lesson, both for her and those around her, that a person's true worth cannot be measured by appearances, but by the strength, character, and dignity they carry with them. With that thought, she walked confidently through the terminal, ready to face another challenge in New York. Jasmine Carter walked through the bustling terminal of LaGuardia Airport with firm, determined steps. The city of New York buzzed with its usual frenetic energy, and Jasmine felt invigorated to be there. The crucial meeting awaiting her was an opportunity to expand her empire even further, perhaps even opening doors to new international markets. She was prepared, but she also knew that every detail mattered, including how she presented herself to the investors. As soon as she exited the airport, Jasmine was greeted by Thomas, her personal driver in New York, who was waiting for her in a sleek black sedan. "Welcome to New York, Miss Carter." Thomas greeted her, opening the car door with a genuine smile. "Thank you, Thomas. It's good to see you again," Jasmine replied as she stepped into the car. As the vehicle glided through the busy streets of Manhattan, Jasmine looked at the towering skyscrapers and the crowds bustling along the sidewalks. The city had a unique way of energizing her. She was determined to impress the investors, not just with her proposals, but with her presence. She knew that in a world where appearances mattered as much as ideas, visual impact could be decisive. The car pulled up in front of the Plaza Hotel, one of New York's most iconic landmarks. Jasmine had decided to make a brief stop before heading to her meeting, to freshen up, change her clothes, and mentally prepare herself. She knew that how she presented herself to the investors was crucial, and she wanted her appearance to reflect her true status. She was greeted by the hotel manager, an elegant and professional woman named Maria, who was already familiar with Jasmine from previous stays. "Miss Carter, it's a pleasure to have you with us again," Maria said with a warm smile. "Your room is ready. Is there anything else you need?" "Just what I need for a quick rest and a change of clothes." "I have an important meeting shortly," Jasmine replied. "Of course, please don't hesitate to let us know if you need anything," Maria said as she escorted Jasmine to the luxurious elevator. Jasmine entered the impeccably decorated suite and looked around, feeling the comfort and sophistication of the place. She had little time before her meeting, but she knew that every minute spent there was an investment in her own confidence. She walked to the closet, where she had left a few carefully selected outfits during her last visit to New York. She took out an elegant navy blue dress made of a light, sophisticated fabric, pairing it with a blazer that had a flawless cut. Low, discreet heels completed the look. Looking at herself in the mirror, Jasmine saw reflected what she knew to be true, a powerful woman, worthy of respect, who was about to take another step forward in her brilliant career. As she prepared, the room phone rang. It was Maria, the hotel manager. "Miss Carter, I just wanted to let you know that your car will be ready to take you to your meeting whenever you're ready," Maria said. "Thank you, Maria. I'll be leaving in 15 minutes. Jasmine replied, checking the time. Jasmine took a deep breath and, for a moment, closed her eyes. She remembered the challenges she had faced throughout her career, the countless times she had been underestimated, the doors slammed in her face, and the moments when her work had been credited to others. But most of all, she remembered all the times she had overcome those barriers, proving to herself and the world that she was more than capable. 15 minutes later, Jasmine descended to the lobby, where Thomas was already waiting. As she stepped into the car, she felt more prepared than ever. New York's traffic, usually a source of stress for many, seemed irrelevant to her at that moment. Her thoughts were entirely focused on the meeting. The car stopped in front of a glass-walled building, the headquarters of one of the country's largest investment funds. Jasmine knew that many of those present at the meeting had already heard her name, but there was still skepticism. After all, it was rare to see a Black woman, especially one from a humble background, leading such a vast transportation empire. Jasmine stepped out of the car with confidence, her posture and appearance reflecting the power and determination she carried. The receptionist, upon seeing her, immediately stood up and greeted her with respect. "Miss Carter, the investors are already waiting for you in the conference room on the 30th floor. May I escort you there?" "Of course, thank you," Jasmine replied as she made her way to the elevator. The elevator ascended smoothly, and Jasmine used the few seconds to focus. When the doors opened on the 30th floor, she stepped out and was greeted by an assistant who led her to the impressive conference room. As she entered, all eyes turned to her. The murmurs ceased and silence filled the room. Jasmine smiled inwardly. The first impression had been made, and now it was time to show who she really was. "Good morning, everyone," Jasmine said with a confident smile as she walked to the front of the room. "It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm sure that together, we'll accomplish great things." The investors watched her closely, some still seeming to evaluate her, but Jasmine knew that in a few minutes, they would realize they were not just in the presence of a successful businesswoman, but a visionary. Someone who not only mastered her field, but also turned every challenge into an opportunity. The presentation was about to begin, and Jasmine was ready to prove, once again, that she was a force to be reckoned with. The conference room was a model of elegance and sophistication, with glass walls offering a panoramic view of Manhattan. The air was thick with anticipation as Jasmine entered, and the leather chairs adjusted to accommodate all the investors and executives present. It was an environment that exuded power and influence, and Jasmine was about to become the protagonist of the scene. She walked to the center of the room, where a presentation table was set up with a projector and a laptop ready to start the display. Before beginning, Jasmine took one last look at the faces watching her. All were prominent figures in the investment world, and she knew that to impress them, she would need to present not just numbers and data, but a compelling vision for the future. "Good morning, everyone," Jasmine began, her voice clear and full of confidence. "Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. What I'm going to present is not just a financial report, but a vision of how our company can transform the transportation sector and expand its operations globally." She gestured to the projector, which immediately began displaying a detailed presentation. The first slide provided an overview of Carter Logistics, highlighting its journey from its founding to its current status as a market leader. Jasmine continued, explaining how the company had distinguished itself through operational efficiency and exceptional customer service, factors that had put it ahead of the competition. "Our company is not just a logistics provider, it's a crucial link in the national supply chain. With the growing demand for fast and reliable delivery services, we are positioned to capitalize on this trend," Jasmine said, as graphs and statistics illustrated the company's steady growth. The investors watched intently, some taking notes as Jasmine spoke. She went on to detail the international expansion plans, an area that, according to her calculations, could bring a significant increase in revenue. She mentioned the target markets, strategic partnerships, and technological innovations they plan to implement. "Based on our market analysis, we are projecting expansion into Asia and Europe over the next 2 years," Jasmine continued. These regions offer immense growth potential, and we've already initiated talks with local partners to ensure a successful entry. The next slide showed strong financial forecasts and a detailed risk analysis. Jasmine explained how the company had mitigated risks through hedging strategies and how the proposed investment would allow for a significant increase in operational capacity and market coverage. Throughout the presentation, Jasmine demonstrated not only a complete mastery of the numbers and data, but also a deep understanding of market trends and customer needs. She was so well prepared that even the most challenging questions from the investors were met with precision and clarity. "What about the environmental impact of the expansion?" asked one of the investors, a middle-aged man with a critical expression. Jasmine smiled and nodded, showing she was ready for this question. "Excellent question. We are committed to sustainable practices and have already implemented stringent measures to minimize our environmental impact. We're investing in a more efficient fleet and technologies that reduce carbon emissions. Additionally, we plan to achieve sustainability certifications for all our international operations." As the meeting progressed, the investors began to show signs of enthusiasm. They were impressed not only by Jasmine's strategic plan, but also by her ability to respond to every question with confidence and competence. There was a growing sense that they were witnessing a significant opportunity. When the presentation concluded, Jasmine addressed the group with a confident stance. "In summary, what we offer is not just an investment in a logistics company, but a stake in a promising and ever-evolving future. Our company is poised to grow and innovate, and we are eager to collaborate with you to realize this vision." The investors began to rise, and Jasmine noticed a shift in the overall tone of the room. The initial skepticism had been replaced by palpable respect. Many of them approached her to ask additional questions and discuss potential partnerships. Heather, who had been in the room as an observer, was one of the first to approach Jasmine after the meeting. She seemed genuinely impressed. "Jasmine, your presentation was extraordinary," Heather said. "I truly had no idea of the scale of what you're doing. Congratulations." "Thank you, Heather," Jasmine replied with a satisfied smile. "I'm glad you found the presentation valuable. Now, we have a lot of work ahead to turn these opportunities into reality." With the meeting successfully behind her, Jasmine knew the next step was to initiate negotiations and secure strategic partnerships that would enable Carter Logistics to achieve its global ambitions. She was confident that, with the right backing and support, her empire would continue to thrive and overcome any challenges that arose. As she exited the building, Jasmine felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had faced prejudice, challenges, and the constant need to prove her worth. But at the end of the day, what truly mattered was that she had clearly and undeniably demonstrated that she was a force to be reckoned with in the business world. And as she looked out at the Manhattan skyline, she knew this was just the beginning of a new and exciting chapter in her journey. Jasmine Carter sat in her first-class seat, the episode with the flight attendant still fresh in her mind. The flight to New York seemed endless, and Jasmine tried to focus on her thoughts about the important meeting awaiting her, even as the discomfort and frustration of the incident lingered. The flight attendant had approached her again, this time with a softer tone. "Miss Carter, I just wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding earlier." She tried to sound sincere, but Jasmine could detect a slight tension in her voice. "I had no idea who you were, and I'm sorry for the inappropriate treatment." Jasmine looked at her, keeping a cold gaze. There was no need to respond. The damage was already done. "I understand," Jasmine said, maintaining a neutral tone. "I just hope the situation serves as a lesson for you." The flight attendant nodded, visibly embarrassed, before stepping away. Jasmine decided not to prolong the conversation. She took out her laptop and began reviewing the documents for the meeting, trying to distract herself and focus on what really mattered. The flight continued, and as the hours passed, Jasmine allowed herself to reflect on what had happened. The humiliation had been hard to swallow, but she knew it wasn't just a matter of personal dignity. It was a painful reminder of the prejudice that still existed, regardless of how much success a person might achieve. She looked out the airplane window, watching the clouds and the dark sky, and thought about how her life had been marked by challenges. From a difficult childhood to the struggle of building a business empire, Jasmine had faced many obstacles, but she always got up and kept moving forward. The incident with the flight attendant was just another hurdle to overcome. During the flight, Jasmine didn't speak about the incident with the other passengers, preferring to maintain a respectful silence. She didn't want to turn the situation into a spectacle and instead chose to focus on her preparation for the meeting that would define the future of her company. The plane began its descent toward New York, and Jasmine felt a mix of relief and anxiety. New York represented not just a new opportunity, but also a chance to show that nothing, not even an act of prejudice, could deter her from her path. As the plane touched down, Jasmine gathered her belongings and prepared to disembark. The incident on the flight had certainly left its mark, but she was determined to move forward with dignity and confidence. As Jasmine exited the plane, she took one last look at the flight attendant, who was busy helping passengers disembark. There was a sense of mutual understanding between them, even if no more words were exchanged. Jasmine knew that the incident did not define who she was, but how she handled it spoke volumes about her strength. At the New York airport, Jasmine felt the stark contrast between the city's hustle and the calm flight she had just endured. The chill of the New York winter greeted her as she made her way to the terminal with a clear goal in mind, the crucial meeting that could open new doors for her company. She passed through security and found Thomas, her driver, waiting with a warm smile. "Good evening, Miss Carter," Thomas said as he helped with her luggage. "I hope the flight was comfortable." Jasmine gave a tired smile, though she still managed to show appreciation. "Good evening, Thomas. The flight had its challenges, but I'm ready for the meeting." "Excellent. We'll head straight to the hotel and then get you ready for the appointment," Thomas said as she got into the car. During the drive to the hotel, Jasmine remained silent, reflecting on what had happened. The incident had affected her more than she wanted to admit, but she knew she needed to channel that energy into the meeting and her company. Every challenge faced, every obstacle overcome, was an opportunity to demonstrate her resilience and determination. Upon arriving at the Plaza Hotel, Jasmine bid farewell to Thomas and entered the elegant lobby. Despite the painful injustice of the day, she was determined to put it behind her and focus on performing her best in the meeting. While waiting for the elevator, Jasmine reminded herself of her mission, not to let prejudice veer her off course. What truly mattered was how she rose to adversities and continued to fight for her success and for justice. The elevator arrived, and Jasmine stepped in, resolved to face the next challenge with the same strength and dignity she had always shown. The future awaited her, and she was ready to face it, no matter what came her way. In her suite at the Plaza Hotel, Jasmine was reviewing the final documents for the meeting when her phone started buzzing incessantly. Notifications were coming in at an alarming rate, and she wondered if something was happening. Looking at the screen, she saw a flood of messages and missed calls. Her mind immediately went to the incident on the flight, fearing the worst. The first contact was from Heather, her friend and business ally. Heather sounded clearly concerned. "Jasmine, did you see the news?" Heather asked, her voice filled with urgency. "No, not yet." "What happened?" Jasmine responded, trying to stay calm. "A passenger filmed the incident on the plane. The video is circulating on social media and has gained a lot of attention. It's all over the news sites. What happened is being widely discussed, and you've become a major topic." Jasmine was silent for a moment, processing the information. The unexpected impact was just beginning to reveal itself. She knew the media often amplified situations, but she hadn't anticipated it happening so quickly and intensely. "Oh my God," Jasmine murmured. "And what are they saying exactly?" Heather paused before responding. "The video shows the flight attendant treating you with disdain, and many people are sharing their views on racial prejudice. There's a huge wave of support for you, but also a lot of criticism toward the airline. It seems the case has sparked a significant discussion about racism and how people are treated based on their appearance." Jasmine sighed, the weight of the situation beginning to settle in. She knew that racial prejudice was a complex and sensitive issue, and the fact that her case was now being publicly discussed was both an opportunity and a challenge. "I need to see this for myself," Jasmine said, resolute. "I'll check the news and see how I can respond to this." "Of course, and if you need any help, I'm here," Heather offered. "Just remember, you have a lot of support, and the focus should be on how to turn this into something positive." Jasmine thanked Heather and ended the call. She immediately accessed social media and news sites where the video was widely circulating. The footage showed the moment the flight attendant confronted her, and the audio captured part of the conversation. The comments and reactions were varied. Many expressed solidarity, voicing anger over Jasmine's treatment and emphasizing the need to combat prejudice. Others were more critical of the airline, questioning its practices and the training of its staff. Seeing the public response, Jasmine felt a mix of emotions. There was acknowledgement of her experience, but also pressure to handle the situation strategically. She needed to be cautious about how to respond and leverage the situation to foster a constructive discussion on equality and respect. As she prepared for the meeting, Jasmine made some calls and reached out to her public relations team. It was crucial to control the narrative and ensure her message was clear. "We need to draft an official statement," Jasmine told her communications director. "I want to make sure we're addressing the issue with dignity and also using the media attention to speak about the importance of combating prejudice." Communications Director David was ready to assist. "Understood, Jasmine. We'll create a statement that reflects your stance and the seriousness of the matter. We can also plan interviews and events to help maintain the focus on a positive and constructive message." "Great," Jasmine agreed. "And please ensure we're also working on a strategy to address the airline. Let's make sure they take concrete actions." David promised to handle it and prepare a statement to be released soon. Jasmine felt relief knowing she had a dedicated team to help manage the situation. The following day brought a wave of media coverage. The news was dominated by the incident, with numerous television programs and radio stations discussing Jasmine's case. Public support for her grew, with many voicing their opposition to the treatment she received. Jasmine knew that, despite the challenges, the situation provided a platform to discuss important issues about racism and discrimination. She was preparing to use this opportunity in the best way possible, focusing on the message she wanted to convey. When it came time for the investor meeting, Jasmine was determined not to let the incident on the flight affect her performance. She entered the room with renewed confidence, knowing she was about to demonstrate once again that nothing could impede her success. The meeting was a success, with investors impressed not only by the company's expansion plans, but also by how Jasmine was handling the situation. Her professionalism and ability to maintain composure were noted and appreciated by all. At the end of the day, Jasmine returned to the hotel with a sense of accomplishment. The media impact had been intense, but it had also generated a wave of support and a platform for discussing important issues. She was ready to continue fighting, not only for her company's success, but also for a more just and equitable society. The first rays of sunlight began to brighten New York as Jasmine woke up at the Plaza Hotel. The city was vibrant and bustling, but the flight incident was still fresh in her mind. She knew that, in addition to business meetings and commitments, managing the public fallout was something she would need to handle carefully. As she reviewed the morning news, Jasmine saw that the incident had triggered a surge of public support. Social media was filled with messages of solidarity and outrage over how she had been treated. Influencers, politicians, and public figures were speaking out, condemning prejudice and praising Jasmine for her dignity and professionalism. One of the first articles Jasmine read was from the New York Times, highlighting the unjust treatment she endured and mentioning the urgent need for diversity training for airline employees. The article also emphasized how the incident had spotlighted broader issues of racial discrimination. Jasmine's phone buzzed with a message from Heather. "Jasmine, the public response has been incredible. There's a growing campaign in support of you, and social media is flooded with messages of solidarity. There's also a movement calling for changes in airline customer service policies." Heather informed her with a tone of contained enthusiasm. "That's great to hear, Heather," Jasmine replied, trying to stay calm. But what is the airline doing about it? They're facing a lot of pressure. It seems they've already started reviewing their internal policies and are considering implementing mandatory training for all staff. There's also been a public apology, and they're offering you compensation, along with an invitation to meet with their executives. Jasmine considered the news. The public pressure was forcing changes, and this could be an important step toward creating a lasting impact. This is a good start, Jasmine said. But I want to make sure that the changes are real and effective. I need to see what they have to offer and discuss how we can work together to promote a more inclusive environment. Heather agreed and continued. There are also a number of interviews and TV programs interested in speaking with you. What do you think? I think it's an opportunity to use the platform we have now to talk about important issues. Jasmine replied with determination. Let's focus on how we can turn this situation into something positive, not just for me, but for everyone who faces prejudice. Jasmine spent the rest of the morning preparing for the interviews and drafting a statement for the media. Her PR team helped review the key points and ensured that her message was clear and impactful. In the afternoon, she participated in a live interview with renowned journalist Maria Lopez on a major news program. The interview was conducted with sensitivity, as Maria approached the incident and the public response with empathy. Ms. Carter, first of all, we'd like to express our admiration for your stance throughout this situation. How do you feel seeing the support you're receiving from the public and the changes being discussed? Maria asked with a respectful expression. Jasmine took a deep breath before answering. I appreciate the kind words, Maria. The public support has been truly encouraging. However, what really matters is that this situation forces us to reflect on the practices and attitudes that perpetuate prejudice. I want this moment to serve as a catalyst for a broader discussion about equality and respect across all sectors. I believe that meaningful change will only occur when we all commit to confronting and correcting these injustices. Maria nodded, clearly impressed. That's very powerful, Jasmine. And what about the airline's response? I'm awaiting a meeting with them to discuss their proposed changes. Jasmine replied. What's important is to ensure that the changes aren't just symbolic, but that they actually lead to results and improve the treatment of all passengers. The interview was a success, and Jasmine received praise for her eloquence and ability to turn a negative situation into an opportunity to promote justice and inclusion. Social media continued to buzz with support, and the media coverage expanded the discussion on prejudice and discrimination. By the end of the day, Jasmine felt exhausted but also satisfied with the progress being made. The public reaction had created an opportunity to address important issues and push for real changes. She knew the road ahead was still long, but she was determined to use her platform to make a difference. When she returned to the hotel, she found a thank you message from Heather, congratulating her on the success of the interviews and offering continued support. Jasmine smiled, grateful for the support. She was aware that while she had faced a significant challenge, the outcome could be a positive force for change. As Jasmine prepared for the next phase of her fight, she felt a renewed sense of determination. The incident on the flight had tested her resilience, but also provided an opportunity to promote a message of hope and equality. The future was filled with challenges, but also with possibilities, and Jasmine was ready to face them with courage and commitment. After a week of intense media coverage and public discussions, Jasmine Carter found herself at a turning point. The heat of the controversy was beginning to wane, but the aftermath of the incident was still unfolding. The media impact had been significant, and Jasmine was now ready to meet with the airline and explore opportunities to promote lasting change. On the morning of her meeting with the airline, Jasmine was both determined and prepared. She wore a dark, elegant suit, a symbol of her strength and professionalism. As she entered the airline's corporate office, she was greeted by a team of executives, including CEO Laura Mitchell and HR Director Mark Collins. Laura, a middle-aged woman with a keen and sincere gaze, stood up to greet Jasmine. Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. Laura began with a voice that conveyed sincerity. We deeply regret the incident and want to work with you to ensure that something like this never happens again. Jasmine nodded, appreciating the warm welcome. Thank you for meeting with me. Jasmine replied. My goal is to ensure that this situation results in concrete changes that promote a more inclusive and respectful environment for everyone. Laura and Mark led her to a conference room where they began discussing what the airline was doing to address the incident. Laura presented an initial proposal. We are committed to implementing a diversity and inclusion training program for all our employees. Additionally, we plan to review our customer service policies and ensure our procedures are more inclusive. We want to hear your suggestions and work together to make these changes effective. Jasmine listened attentively, evaluating the proposal. She knew it was a step in the right direction, but was also aware that actions needed to be monitored and assessed to ensure their effectiveness. This is a good start, Jasmine said after a reflective pause. However, I would suggest creating an independent committee to oversee the implementation of these changes and ensure they are truly effective. This committee could include representatives from civil rights organizations and diversity experts. Laura and Mark exchanged looks before responding. I think your suggestion is excellent, Laura said. We agree to include an independent committee to help ensure the effectiveness of the changes. We will work on forming this group and ensuring it has the authority to review and recommend improvements. Jasmine nodded, satisfied with the response. She also emphasized the importance of ongoing communication with customers and the public about the airline's efforts to promote inclusion. Transparency will be key to restoring public trust, Jasmine stressed. It's important for the airline to clearly communicate its actions and progress to show that it is genuinely committed to change. Laura agreed. We will ensure that all our actions are communicated transparently, she said. We appreciate your feedback and look forward to working together to implement these changes. After the meeting, Jasmine felt a mix of relief and satisfaction. There was a genuine commitment from the airline to address the issue, and the creation of the independent committee was an important step toward ensuring accountability. Back at the hotel, Jasmine received a message from Heather with an additional update. The airline had issued a formal public apology and announced its commitment to the proposed changes, including the formation of the independent committee. Jasmine, the public response has been very positive, Heather wrote. People are seeing this as an example of how public pressure can lead to real change. Your efforts are making a difference. Jasmine smiled as she read the message. She was pleased with the progress, but also knew that the fight for justice and equality was ongoing. The flight incident had not only highlighted the need for change, but also provided a platform to foster a broader discussion about prejudice and inclusion. In the following days, Jasmine was invited to appear on television programs and interviews, where she spoke about her experiences and the necessary changes to create a fairer and more inclusive environment. Her presence on social media and in interviews helped keep the conversation alive and fostered a deeper dialogue about racism and discrimination. By the end of her journey in New York, Jasmine felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had faced a significant challenge and had contributed to driving important changes. The impact of her fight was being felt across the country, and she knew there was still much work to be done. When she returned to Atlanta, Jasmine was greeted with a warm embrace from her team and colleagues. The support and solidarity she received were sources of strength and inspiration. Reflecting on her experience, Jasmine realized that the flight incident had been a catalyst for a broader conversation about justice and equality. She was determined to continue her work, not only as a successful businesswoman, but as an advocate for change and inclusion. The future was still uncertain, but Jasmine was ready to face it with the same courage and determination she had always shown. The fight for justice and equality would continue, and she was committed to using her voice and platform to make a difference. The soft morning light in Atlanta filtered through the windows of Jasmine Carter's home. She was back to her routine, but the experience of the past few weeks had left indelible marks on her life and perspective. The airport incident and its subsequent media impact had become a turning point, not just for Jasmine, but for many who had followed her story. Sitting at the breakfast table, Jasmine reviewed a report on the progress of the diversity and inclusion initiatives that the airline had pledged to implement. She felt a deep sense of responsibility and pride seeing the changes underway. The independent committee she had suggested was actively working to ensure that the promises were being fulfilled, and Jasmine was frequently in touch with its members to monitor progress. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Heather. "Jasmine, we have a meeting with the media team about the positive impact your story is having. They want to discuss how you can get involved in future awareness campaigns. I think it's a great opportunity to continue promoting equality and inclusion. What do you think?" Jasmine smiled as she read the message. The idea of using her experience to drive positive change resonated deeply with her. "Let's go ahead with this," Jasmine replied. "It's an opportunity to broaden the discussion and ensure that the message about inclusion and respect continues to be heard." With the day reserved for meetings and commitments, Jasmine prepared for a series of interviews and events. She was excited about the chance to use her platform to keep making a difference. But before heading out, she decided to visit a special place, the local community center that supported minority young entrepreneurs. This was a project she had supported for years, and Jasmine felt it was important to see how her efforts were impacting the community. At the community center, Jasmine was warmly welcomed by the staff and young entrepreneurs who had benefited from the programs. She talked with the participants, listened to their stories, and offered words of encouragement. "The support you receive here is just the beginning," Jasmine said during her speech. "The important thing is to keep believing in yourselves and to fight for the opportunities you deserve. We all face challenges, but it's how we deal with those challenges that defines our success." Jasmine's words were met with applause and enthusiasm. She felt a deep connection with the community and a renewed sense of purpose. It was gratifying to see how her success was inspiring others to follow their own paths. After leaving the community center, Jasmine headed to the recording studio for a campaign on equality and inclusion. The production team was excited, and Jasmine prepared to discuss how her experience had shaped her views on the need for meaningful changes across all areas of society. During the recording, Jasmine spoke with passion and sincerity. She shared her personal experience, emphasizing the importance of not judging others by their appearance and fostering a more inclusive environment for everyone. "What happened to me is not an isolated case," Jasmine said, looking directly into the camera. "We all need to come together to ensure that every person, regardless of their color, background, or appearance, is treated with respect and dignity. It is our duty to work together to create a world where equality is not just an ideal, but a lived reality for everyone." The campaign was well received and garnered widespread media coverage. Jasmine's words inspired many to reflect on their own attitudes and engage in the promotion of social justice. As night fell over Atlanta, Jasmine felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had managed to turn a painful situation into a platform for positive change. The airport incident had been a catalyst for a broader discussion on prejudice and inclusion, and Jasmine was proud of the impact she was helping to create. In her home, Jasmine looked out over the illuminated city and reflected on the journey she had been through. While challenges lay ahead, she was more determined than ever to continue her fight for justice and equality. The future was still uncertain, but Jasmine knew that, with courage and determination, she could make a difference. As she prepared for rest, Jasmine felt a renewed sense of hope. The flight incident had tested her resilience, but also reminded her that, even in the face of adversity, there are opportunities to drive significant change. She was ready to face future challenges with the same courage and dignity she had shown so far. Jasmine Carter had become not just a champion of justice, but a symbol of hope and determination for all those facing injustices. The dawn of a new day brought with it the promise of a fairer and more equal future, and Jasmine was committed to continuing the fight for it.